Guys, this is Pete Weber from Havok and Fear Factory. You're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 226 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Pete Weber from Havok. He also plays with Head Shrinker and Nuclear Power Trio, and he also does live stuff for Fear Factory. So, how you doing today, Pete? Glad to be able to have you on.
Heck yeah, man. Good. We just have the day off in Toronto, so I'm just sitting in our hotel room relaxing.
It's so great to hear, man. So, kind of like the format is, I want to do a rundown of your discography and talk about like your musical career. So, take me back to young Pete Weber. So, kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal and what made you want to start playing the drums?
So early on, I was about 5 when I started, started fascinating about playing drums because my parents would play music in the house, and I kind of started to play like on pots and pans and the classic little kid stuff. And but I really was like focused on it. So I would say the first music that really like when I sat down to actually play drums and I got a drum set and stuff was like early grunge music, Nirvana, Primus, Deftones, because that was kind of stuff that my sister was into. So I would hear the music that she was listening to. So it kind of started there, and then when I was like 7 or 8, 9, maybe, I started getting into metal because I just wanted to find some harder drums to play. And I would say the first bands, Metallica, Sepultura, Pantera, um, Anthrax, like all the old thrash bands and stuff like that. Kind of started there, and then vastly spread as I aged and stuff.
All right, cool. So I believe kind of like doing my research, I believe your first band was called Ravage. Tell me about like that. I don't think nobody ever really talks about that.
Yeah, actually, my first band was actually called Pagan. It was in middle school. We were like thrash metal, and we played a bunch of shows, and it was really fun. But that actually got disbanded when I was 15. One of the members ended up having to leave the band. He was like the main guy in the band, so that ended there. But to play some cool shows with some pretty known bands around New England and stuff, and that was a good time. Yeah, but then I was only in Ravage I did one tour with them as a power metal band out of Boston, and so I did that. It went all right, but I wanted something like that was a little more up my alley, and that's the one I had found. Havok was like late 2009, early 2010.
Yeah, and how did you end up joining? Because I believe you joined in 2010.
Yeah, so I saw an ad that David had put out online looking for a metal drummer. It was weird because I was kind of frustrated one day and I just randomly Googled metal drum looking for a drummer. So I hit David up and checked out the music, and it was really awesome. I was like, wow. And he sent me, I think it was 2 or 3 songs via like MP3, and I just videotaped myself playing them after I learned them after a couple of days. It was actually DOA was one of them, but it was all like MIDI drums. And then it was Morbid Symmetry, and there might have been one more, I can't think. But yeah, those were my tryout songs, and he liked me best out of the people that out of their what he was looking for, and I ended up moving to Denver like 2 weeks later.
Awesome. And so tell me about making your first record with Havok. Time is up. So what was the thought process going into making this record, being as it was your first record with the band?
Yeah, a lot. David like is an audio engineer, so a lot of the drums and bass, everything he kind of like will write out before we even go in. So a lot of the drums are like kind of written for me, but like a lot of the flavor, like the fills and stuff, we kind of add later. We still do that to this day because it actually saves a lot of time from having to come together to rehearse songs when we all have busy lives and stuff too. Kind of you can pass the music through email chains, and then we finally get together and kind of do the finishing products on the stuff. Um, but yeah, the idea for that record was just like ultimate speed, pretty much. That was probably will always be our fastest record, and I think David wanted to prove something with that.
Yeah, especially like hearing songs like DOA, Covering Fire, You're Out of My Way. Even the title track is great. Great. I thought this was a good follow-up to the previous album, Burn. So when you joined up Havok, did you want to try to bring something new differently that they didn't have previously?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what intrigued me about Havok was, you know, they're thrash metal, but like everyone's really good and shines throughout the music. That's why we say like lead drums and lead bass because everyone's like a very pivotal member of the music, and I think that I wanted to be more like technical aspect of thrash metal, more progressive, just things you wouldn't hear kind of just the box, because I had a lot of like growing up, I did a lot of Latin fusion playing and stuff too. So I try to throw that in the mix of my playing with like the cymbal work and stuff like that. So yeah.
And what was like the touring cycle like for Time Is Up? Did you like touring outside of like Colorado and
Oh
eventually
yeah.
did like overseas stuff?
Yeah, that was kind of our breakthrough to like world touring, honestly, because we did a lot of tours after Time Is Up, and I don't think we went overseas though until Unnatural Selection came out, or like at least we got festivals at that point. But I think 2012 was our first European tour, but yeah, we toured probably 8, 9 months out of the year for a few years at that point.
All right. And kind of in between Time Is Up and of course the album after that you did like a little EP, Point of No Return. I love
Yeah.
this EP. Tell me about like that. So what was the whole reason for that? Did you wanted to like write some songs that would have to or something to hold fans over before you did Unnatural Selection?
Yeah, we were like in between tours and kind of bored, honestly, and we wanted to, have something to promote the next tour. So like that drum groove from Cradle to the Grave, like that was just something I was messing around downstairs, and David like, well, that was really cool. Like we should use that. So I mean, that whole song's based off that groove. And then Point of No Return, we had that main riff, and I mean, we wrote those two songs in like under it was like a few days, and it's crazy because those are like still like most people's most popular songs. Like those are we have to play those songs.
Yeah,
So it was
otherwise there'd
cool.
be a
Like,
riot.
yeah, that was one time where we actually didn't like David didn't have to sit down and like think about like writing the music. It was kind of just came out in the basement at his house,
All
which was
right.
cool.
Yeah, and I also loved how you also did like the covers, like you covered Sepultura's Arise and Postmortem Reading Blood by Slayer. So what made you guys decide to like cover those songs
Yeah,
in
yeah.
particular?
We wanted to do Slayer just because
Slayer.
we wanted to play. Yeah, we wanted to play it like faster than they had it on the album too. And then we Arise is just a classic Sepultura song. We all love that song, so we thought, why not throw it in there? We all know it, so.
All right. And then kind of going into the next album, Unnatural Selection. I thought that was a pretty good album. And did you feel like more comfortable with that album as opposed to Time Is Up, being as you've now been in the band for a little bit?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely more comfortable. Actually recorded the drums at the Gothic Theater in Denver, which was pretty cool. So like it was just an empty theater and we recorded the drums in there. But we kind of wanted like a more kind of rock and roll vibe to that album, and you can hear it in the songs. It's a little slower paced at times, but you know, we kind of had proved ourselves that we can play fast and tough, so we kind of wanted to throw something a little different out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought it was a great album. Like I feel like the shining moment is of course your drumming. Like your playing on there is insanely tight and like the speed your speed is like unmatched with sort of like the other bands around that time like Warbringer and Evil and stuff. And even like the opening song like I Am the State is just really showcases like your abilities, especially like the little drum solo as sort of like the nice touch to it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really cool part. Yeah, the whole song, I think it was written at one point, and that song, that part wasn't in it, but we always wanted to add like a cool, just like only drum part to a song. So that
Yeah,
was something I think we just made up in the studio too, real quick.
yeah, and I know like last year was of course the 10-year anniversary of that. So how do you feel about the album now even going on 11 years later?
It's a great album, man. We were like on a the only I think about it as a stressful time though, because I remember when we were recording it, the record label was like very stringent. I had to be done at like this one time. Sometimes I just do that, and that was a little stressful for us to get it done that quickly. But otherwise, it's a great album. So
Yeah. And then going into the next album, Conformicide. I love this album. I thought it was kind of like different compared to previous albums, and this was one of my favorite albums from 2017. So, what was like the thought process going into Conformicide?
yeah, so it was kind of like I said, we kind of stepped back with Unnatural Selection. Like, so we kind of wanted to come back with something a little faster and even more. I would say that album's way more like progressive sounding than anything previously we've done, you know. Like longer songs too than we normally do. And we had Nick in the band, and he's like an insane bass player, so we wanted to really showcase his talents as well.
Yeah,
And
he's sick.
we recorded with Steve Evans out in California, and yeah, he did. I loved working with him because I'm from Massachusetts originally. He's from Jersey, so we kept busting each other's balls about the
Yeah,
accents and stuff. And
gotta love
it
the
was a good
rhythm
time.
section.
But also Steve, like on that note, since I was like getting along with him well, he really pushed me to like really nail the parts like perfect too. So I enjoyed that whatever week it was down that we spent at his studio.
Nice. And then I think it was also so around that same year you I believe started up Head Shrinker. Tell me about that.
Yeah, my friend Tim is a good friend of mine from Denver. He originally it was just gonna be like I was just gonna record the drums, which we did, but people ended up liking it, so he's pushing it to like do further things like play shows, and he's got another album he's writing currently that I should be able to record sometime in the fall with him. Um, but yeah, that is different. That was like some of the most different drums I've ever done because it was like there's a lot of weird time signatures and it's kind of like more of a doomy sound too. So I got like huge crash cymbals and stuff, and it was cool. Yeah, it was different for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that it was totally different compared to what I've heard on Havok. And speaking of that, of well, going back to Conformicide, this was actually like, the first time I ever saw you guys was when you did that tour with the Overkill and Crowbar bar at the Masquerade in
Yes,
in Atlanta, and that was pretty much a fun show.
absolutely.
Yeah, and especially like the opening track FPC, especially with the little bass slap bass from Nick. Like, I think he's a really great addition to the band. Adds sort of like a new sort of like I guess energy to Havok that y'all didn't have before.
Yeah, I mean he's insane on stage too. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because I loved his work with like Job for a Cowboy and Cephalic Carnage. Like, he's an insane bassist. One, in my opinion, one of the most underrated bassists, not just in metal but in music in general.
I would agree with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell me about like more of like the touring cycle for Conformicide. I'd love to hear the stories behind this.
Yeah, I mean we got that Megadeth tour, so that was a huge tour for us. We did it was like US and Canada, and then we did like a week in Germany, also in Europe over there with them. And then what else did we do that? We toured a bunch. So Suicidal Tendencies was on that tour, and then we ended up going out with them a couple more times as well for like a couple weeks at a time. And then we also did a ton of summer festivals in Europe that year. Yeah, we toured crazy amount. I'm trying to like think back. And then kind of after that, we did another really good US and Canadian tour with Killswitch Engage and Anthrax called the Killthrax tour. That was an amazing tour, and that was like our first like tour bus tour too. So that was a nice perk to that one. Yeah, we
Yeah,
did a lot of touring that year, for sure.
yeah,
Those couple years.
yeah. And I know also at that same time you also did a Nuclear Power Trio. Tell me about that.
Yeah,
Like, I'm digging deep, man. Tell me,
uh,
because nobody ever
yeah, that's
asks
great.
that.
Yeah. Well, everyone I show that to, they're like, "Wow, this is you playing!" Like it's so different. So that's Greg Burgess's kind of like baby project. But I heard the music one day. It was just one or two songs originally, but it was really cool and it had that like Latin fusion vibe to it, which I've kind of grown up playing kind of stuff like that. So it felt cool to like, you know, go back to that kind of style, like, and yeah, it's a super fun project. And a really fun part is we just have fun with it. You know, it's like it's so different from anything all of us do outside of that. So I enjoy making that music with those guys for sure.
All right. And then, of course, talking about the last Havok album, Five, I love this album. So what was it like going from Conformicide to this?
Um, you know, those songs came out. I don't know. Those were more like those songs were like riffs we had forever that we like went back to. I don't think it's quite as like progressive sounding as Conformicide. It's kind of more like just punch you in the face. a lot of the songs at least. And we worked with the producer Mark Lewis out in Tennessee, and he got like amazing drum tones on that record. He used like it was a Yamaha Studio on the toms, I think a Gretsch kick drum, and then Tom Bell brass snare drum, and it sounds like massive on that album.
Yeah. Yeah, like I loved like post-truth era, dab sog, panpsychism. Like all these songs are great. I know it was written during the whole pandemic and shit. Shit, did that
Right.
like whole thing sort of like affect like the I guess the recording or the music sonically?
As far as what the pandemic,
Yeah.
we recorded it before it happened, so I mean, none of us even knew that was going to happen, but because we had tons of tours lined up, we were going to go with like Capri, then we had something else, and then summer festivals in Europe again. But everything went on hiatus, but we kind of just waited it out. And when we came back on tour this past August, we did a headline tour, and it was like 90% new fans. So whatever happened during the pandemic, it kind of worked because David would ask who's seen us before, and it was like maybe 10% of the people at every show, and everyone else had never seen us. It was crazy. So something worked.
Yeah, and that was actually my second time seeing you guys because I haven't seen you all since that Overkill
Right.
and I was like way overdue for a Havoc show.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, that
and
was it was a really cool tour, and to see like all the new fans. It was inspiring to us.
yeah. And being as it now it's been 4 years since five, have you all started work on the new Havoc album? Like, what's the status with that?
Yeah, we uh, everything's recorded. It's I can't really go into details, but we have stuff recorded, and it will be out uh, in later this year.
Awesome. And because
Yeah.
I know that this year does also mark 20 years since the formation of the band, and you've been a part of the band for 16 of those years. So how do you feel about being part of the Havoc ride for 20 for the 20 years they've been together?
It's been awesome, man. I mean, we've been to so many places together, saw so many things, and we're best friends. So it's what I've always wanted to do, and feels good to do it.
Right. Is there, and being as of course now the 20th anniversary of Havoc as a band, is there like any chance to do a celebration somehow? Maybe throw in some like deep cuts from Burn or Time Is Up or something?
Yeah, we've talked about that. We always talked about maybe trying to like make a medley of like burn songs or something like that that we could do live, which I think would be cool, like Sepultura has done in the past, stuff like that. So yeah, it's been in the talks. We haven't really discussed exactly what we will do, but you know, I wouldn't throw it out of the question for sure.
All right. And I also know that this year well last year you also started playing with a Fear Factory. So how'd you get to hook up with Dino and those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'd met Dino a few times at NAMM, which is like the music convention out in LA, and Havok actually played a few shows in Italy with them in 2012. So kind of like how I really got to know him better from that. But so he was touring with Soulfly like 2 years ago when the pandemic was kind of winding down, and Mike is their bass player who played with Havok. So I'd go see them play, and uh, I had just gotten to talks with Dino about possibly playing the Static X tour, which I did just to fill in at that time. And so that's how all that kind of started. And then I was only supposed to fill in for a little bit, but it just kept going. So
Yeah.
here we are, like a year later.
Yeah, because I remember seeing you all last October at the Masquerade in Atlanta. You did the tour with Lacuna Coil, and that was a fun time. That was actually
Yeah.
funny enough, my first time ever seeing Fear Factory live.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to see Fear Factory for a little over a decade, and I remember even interviewing like Dino before the show, and he's a cool dude.
Absolutely, super chill. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I keep wondering, is like, are you actually in the band, or are you just like playing live?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm in the band too. It's just like we never like made an official announcement, but I'll be playing with them for the future stuff for sure.
Awesome. Will you also be on like the new Fear Factory album?
Yes, I'm thinking so.
Awesome. I'm also looking forward to that. And depending on like what the different bands you're playing, going with like Havoc, Fear Factory, three, what kind of like a mindset is that? Are you allowed to sort of like bring in like your own style, or do you have to maybe like adjust like your playing depending on the bands that you play with?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, mostly So the difference between Havok and Fear Factory is mainly in the feet, the footwork. Because with Fear Factory, I don't know if you know what triggers are, but basically you can hit lighter to create more speed. And so with Fear Factory, I have to use triggers to, and that's the biggest difference. Kind of like I changed from using more like power like that Havok because it's all mics. I just use my ankles with Fear Factory. So it's just a stylistic change, and I had to adjust the kick drum pedals. Also with Fear Factory, the music is not something I wrote. So I definitely use like more mental brain power when I'm playing live with Fear Factory versus with Havok because those songs have been ingrained in my brain and we wrote them. So I would say that's the biggest difference, between those two bands for sure.
And as a drummer, because usually the drummer's job is to like keep the tempo and the beat, otherwise they'll end up like a bloodbath. So do you, when it comes to like the writing of your parts, do you ever have like a whole beat written and then the band writes over that, or do you need to hear what the guitars are doing in order to lay down your parts?
It can go both ways. Like I said, that's what we did from the cradle to the grave with Havok. Like there was no guitars written. We just wrote that drum groove and chugged the guitars behind it after. And it does go both ways for sure.
All right. And then the final question I want to ask you is talking about like your drum setup, because I'm always like fascinated like with bands, like what kind of gear they use. So what's like your like drum setup in terms of like the types of drums you play, sticks, pedals, and cymbals and stuff?
Yeah, sure. So we just got actually a brand new kit on this tour. I'm sponsored by Pearl. So we got a Masters Maple Pure. It's in putty gray finish. And we have 8x7 tom, 10x8 up top for the racks, and then a 16x16 floor tom, and then two 20x16 kick drums. I like shorter kick drum height because the rebound is better, as I've noticed with bikes, like playing really speed fast stuff. And then I have a Gibraltar low profile rack on each side of the kit, and then it's all Sabian cymbals. Mainly use HHX explosion crashes. I have an ozone crash, two 18-inch hand hammered chinas, and two 13-inch fusion hats, which have like a really thick bottom and a thin top, and they have an amazing like chuck to them when you whack them hard when they're open. And then I have this little cymbal disc. Everyone asks me about the cymbal disc. It's like something that they don't really sell at the stores, but it's instead of getting a whole nother huge ride for my left side, I have this 10-inch cymbal. It's called, made by Sabian, and it's just a flat disc, but it sounds like almost identical to the other ride cymbal. So that was like a really cool find. I got that like a decade ago. And then I recently got some 10-inch Sabian sick hats because there's some parts in Fear Factory where I needed a permanently closed hi-hat. So I got that recently, and that's kind of cool. I kind of even use it as a effect cymbal too. With them, I have a mini china up over the toms too, 10-inch one. And then what else? I've been using Axis pedals. I normally use Trick, but with Fear Factory, I needed something a little lighter on the touch. So I've been using Axis pedals on this tour, just A longboards. And what else? Vader drumsticks. I use either 2B or Power 1A. I use Aquarian drum heads. I've been using the ice white reflectors on the toms, on the batter side, and then just some classic clears on the bottom. Snare drum, I have the Joey Jordison 13x6.5 right now, Pearl, and I use the high energy normally on that, which has like a Kevlar coating in the middle, so it can take a lot more abuse than like a normal standard head. And I think that's about it. The other hardware is mostly Pearl. I think that's it.
Awesome. So kind of in the end, to wrap things up, what's next for Havok and Fear Factory? I know you've got that tour with Machine Head coming up. Is just anything else with either of your projects that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I mean, so we go to Australia with Machine Head and New Zealand right after this in March, and then we get a little break, and then Fear Factory is going to do 3 festivals in the States. We do Welcome to Rockville in Florida, Sick New World in Vegas, and then there's one more, but I can't tell top of my head. I was trying to think of it the other day. And then Havok does Milwaukee Metal Fest in May, and then I'll go to Europe with Fear Factory in June for summer festivals, and then I'll go back to Europe in August with Havok for summer festivals. So it's gonna be a busy 7 months or so.
Awesome. So, thank you, Pete, for this conversation. It's great to be able to have you on my show. It's just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Sure, yeah. Just thank you to the fans that keep appreciating music, and see you out on the road.
Awesome. So, everybody, Pete Weber from Havok and Fear Factory. See you next time.